Based on the Wolf series of novels by the author Hugh Howey, Silo is a science fiction dystopian TV series that is set in a ruined and toxic future where people lived in a giant, hundreds of stories deep underground silo. As they live in a society that is full of regulations that are said to keep them protected from the quote-unquote deadly outside world, how will things turn out if some people start questioning these regulations? Let us find out in the first 6 episodes of the American television series Silo. On one fateful day, Silo's most beloved sheriff Holston Becker shocks everyone as he declares that he wants to leave. His best friend, Chief Deputy Sam Marnes, begs him not to, but Holston bravely says the words out loud. In the silo, if anyone states that they want out, it will be irrevocable and final. Then, they will be tasked to clean the camera that serves as the people's window to the outside world. Voluntarily going to the cell in Holding 3, Holston awaits his impending journey outside the silo, which is his home for his whole life. Nobody in the silo knows why they are there or who built it in the first place. They also don't have any idea why the outside world becomes so deadly that living the silo will mean death. The only contact they have with the outside world is the camera that projects its image inside the silo. 3 years ago, Holston and his wife, Allison, were finally granted permission to have a child and gave them 1 year to conceive. On their way to the doctor to remove Allison's birth control pill, they stopped by the cafeteria first to get breakfast. There, a fertility counselor named Gloria Hildebrandt approached them to offer her services, despite Holston's obvious disapproval. A few weeks later, there was still no luck in getting pregnant, and Allison also got into trouble at work because she posted an article about recovering deleted files. Bernard Holland, the head of the IT department of the silo, reminded her that she needed to get his approval first before posting any IT-related article. Due to that, he deleted her post. At home, Allison told Holston how annoying, but suspicious at the same time, it is that Silo had so many regulations about not talking about the times before the place was built. In turn, Holston insisted that the pact was the only history and law they needed, and it was his duty as the sheriff to make sure that no one repeats the same mistakes as the rebels did before. A few more months passed, and they still didn't have any luck to conceive a child. At that time, Allison is on her way to work when she was approached by Gloria, who told her that she needed to ask a question in private. With that, they went to the old woman's place where she asked if she ever wondered what was the truth about the silo and its history. Hearing that, Allison decided to go, but before she could leave, Gloria questioned her if she really thought that the judicial, referring to the people who had the highest power in the silo, would allow someone like her to have a child. This got Allison thinking, but Holston immediately shut her down. One day, a guy named George Wilkins, a programmer from the MIDS, which is the midsection of the silo, submitted a ticket to the IT department, and it was Allison's turn to see him. But as it turned out, George was actually waiting for Allison to come to see him because of a hard drive that he found. Because of the article that Allison posted before, George managed to open the hard drive, but he cannot locate its content. After a while, Allison managed to dig the files and they found the blueprint of the silo, meaning that the hard drive came from the early times of the place. And to their shock, they discover a body camera feed of a cleaner from before showing a greener and livelier outside world than what was being taught to them. This made Allison question things about Silo and the Pact even more. Since then, things have gone spiral between Allison and Holston until they ran out of time to have a child. And one day, he just got home to his bleeding wife, revealing to him that the judicial lied to them as she showed him her real birth control pill that she took out on her own body. It was then revealed that the birth control pill that the doctor showed them before, which was said to be Allison's, was a fake. Realizing what his wife did, Holston quickly went away to get help. However, the next time he found Allison was in the cafeteria, telling everybody that everything in the silo was a lie. But what she said next truly made everyone terrified. At that moment, she declared that she wanted to leave the silo. Because of that, she was put in Holding 3, and as a sheriff, Holston was the one who sent her out. Before she went away, they had a conversation in which Allison told him about what she saw about the greener and livelier outside world. Then, she promised that if the outside world was indeed different from what they know inside, she will clean the camera as a sign. Surprisingly, Allison indeed cleaned the camera. For the people of the silo, it was just an act of punishment, but it was a totally different story for Holston. However, as the people continuously watched the feed, it seemed like Allison eventually collapsed and died. 2 more years later, George was found dead, and it was believed to be a suicide. Yet a woman named Juliet Nichols, an engineer in the Deep Down, which was the lowest level of the silo, claimed that he was murdered. Due to that, Holston and Marnd traveled down to the mechanical to meet Juliet. As it turned out, Juliet and George were a couple, but they were unsanctioned, so very few people knew about it. Then, Juliet showed Holston the last items that George left her before he died, which were a toy and a note asking if she could remember where she found the toy. Due to that, the two went to George's secret place, which was part of the secret tunnel that the latter found in Silo's blueprint. And to Holston's surprise, he saw for the first time the machine that drilled the ground where the silo was built. There, a bunch of items from before the silo, also known as relics, were hidden, one of which was a video camera. But together, Holston and Juliet found something more important than the relics, referring to the hard drive in the printed copy of Allison's post that had her written notes at the back. At that time, the two began to argue as Holston wanted to burn the hard drive before anyone found out and said that he would report George's death as an accident. Juliet, on the other hand, insisted that they needed to know the truth, but he just shut her down. Pissed, she remarked that if he only knew how to listen, Allison would still be alive. This made Holston rethink his decisions in life. Because of that, he decided to keep on investigating, promising Juliet that he would send a word or a signal once he found out the truth. Going back to the present, Holston is about to leave the silo and everyone is feeling sad about it. On the other hand, he is not, because the moment he steps outside, he proves to himself that Allison was right all along. However, to the people inside, it's just like he dies as soon as he reaches Allison's body. Witnessing this, Juliet stomps her way out as he calls Holston a liar. She then goes to Martha Walker, a workshop owner who has been her mother figure for years. There, Juliet tells her about what she and Holston found out and has promised to her that he will find the truth. Yet, the sheriff went out to clean without getting back a word or a signal. That's why she called him a liar. But all hope is not lost as she reveals that she didn't tell everything to Holston. As it turns out, there's still the bottom half of George's note that she hid from the sheriff, which writes that he found what he was looking for. With that, Juliet goes back to the tunnel and remembers the time that George told her about the door under the water, which was right below them. Because they all grow up in the silo, none of them know how to swim, so Juliet was scared for George. Due to that, she told him to only tell her about it when he finally found what he was looking for. And as the note says, George did find it, so Juliet tries to climb down the water using the rope. Unfortunately, fear of the water gets over her and she decides to climb back up. Disappointed with herself, Juliet drinks the night away. Unfortunately, the generator starts acting up again the next day, so she has to get there even though she has a hangover. But upon seeing the rookie engineer Cooper trying to fix it, she punches him and fixes the generator herself. Witnessing this, head engineer Knox scolds her for what she did, stating that Cooper is her shadow, so she should be teaching him how to do the job. In turn, Juliet points out that no matter what patching up they do, the generator will keep on failing if they will not shut it down into a proper fixing. Knox, on the other hand, insists that they cannot do that as he doesn't want to be the first head engineer in the history of Silo to shut down the generator. Meanwhile, there has been great unease in the silo because they currently don't have a sheriff. Marnes meets with Mayor Ruth Johns and discusses the candidates to be the next sheriff. But they both know that the leading candidate, Deputy Paul Billings, is a man from the judicial, and it might mean that he will just be a puppet for them. With that, she comments that it could have been easier if Holston had recommended someone. Just then, Marnes reveals that Holston actually did, and it was Juliet, which he doesn't approve of. Yet, they both head down to Mechanical to see her. There, the mayor sees how good of an engineer Juliet is and how her job keeps the people of the silo alive. Because of that, she decides to entrust the duty to her. However, Juliet declines the offer, so Johns just gives her Holston's badge, stating that he wants her to have it whether she accepts the position or not. Afterward, she tells it to her friends on the Mechanical, and Deputy Hank, who's assigned to the place, notices something on Holston's badge. Realizing what it is, Juliet comes running to tell the mayor and the chief deputy that she changes her mind and now wants to be the sheriff. Yet, she wants to make sure that the generator will be fixed first before she leaves Mechanical. In that sense, Juliet asks Johns to shut down the generator for them to fix it, to which the mayor reluctantly agrees. After that, she meets with other engineers and discusses their plans to fix the generator. But they only have 30 minutes after shutting it down to sort out and fix the problem before the steam that's powering up the generator blows up and kills everyone in the silo. At this time, Juliet wants Cooper by her side so she can properly teach him before she leaves. With that, they all get to work and put the silo in the dark for a while. But as the power goes out, everyone who's gathered in the cafeteria for safety sees the camera feed glitches and briefly shows the greener outside world. Going back to Deep Down, Cooper starts to get nervous so he cannot focus. To make matters worse, the steam gets hotter sooner than expected. Because of that, Juliet has to leave the fixing to Cooper while she pumps water to the core so they can have more time. However, the water starts flooding the chamber and she starts struggling because she's afraid that she might drown. Fortunately, her efforts are rewarded as Cooper finally fixes the blade in time, and she also learns how to swim. With that, everyone celebrates as the generator is finally fixed and the power is back on the silo. After that, Juliet goes to Martha to tell her that she accepted the job of being the sheriff. But before she leaves, she gives her the video camera she found on George's stuff and asks if Martha can get anything from it. Then, Juliet thanks her for looking out for her in all those years. In turn, Martha reminds her not to end up like George. Meanwhile, Johns and Marnes are finally back to up top when they decide to stop for a minute so she can drink water. Later on, she's signing Juliet up as the new sheriff when she suddenly feels sick, so she heads to the restroom. Later on, when Marnes doesn't get a response from the mayor, he barges inside the restroom and discovers Johns dying on the floor. Not long after, Juliet arrives and finds Marnes, Bernard, and Robert Sims, the head of security in the silo, in the mayor's office. Marnes believes that he was the actual target of the poisoning and Johns was just the unfortunate one because she was the only one to drink on their way. Because of that, he requests a list of every criminal he came across in the mids. Being in a secret relationship with the mayor, Marnes takes this case seriously and personally. Shortly, they notice Juliet, and Bernard introduces himself to her, adding to the description that he will be the temporary mayor until the election is done because he is the head of it. He states that as soon as he's sworn in, he will do the same to her as well so she can start her duty as a sheriff. In a flashback, a young Juliet was helping her mother and father attend to her sick brother. They were a small but happy family. But one day, a tragic incident happened that took the life of her mother and brother. Since then, her relationship with her father started to get rough as he was always busy with work. Because of that, Juliet had to take her mother's and brother's stuff to recycling alone. In the silo, the stuff of the deceased was put into recycling so others could still use it. On the other hand, the broken things were thrown down to the mechanical to be incinerated. But there were times when the stuff that was thrown away was still fixable, so the engineers repaired them. Upon seeing a young girl putting things in the recycling all by herself, the man in charge told Juliet that she shouldn't be doing it alone, especially at a young age. At home, she cooked an egg because she was hungry and her father wasn't home yet. But she got distracted as she fixed her mother's chair, causing the pan to burn. Just then, her father got home and scolded her for what she did. In turn, Juliet also talked back to her father, stating that she shouldn't be doing things alone because she was just a kid. And later that night, she ran away and went down to mechanical, giving Martha a forged letter saying that her father allowed her to go. At that moment, she got to know Knox and the others. However, it turned out that Martha noticed the wrong spelling, so she called her father. But upon realizing that it was the place for her, Father let her stay to do what she thought was the best for her. Going back to the present, the clerical worker in the station named Sandy takes Juliet to her new office. Sandy is obviously not fond of her as the new sheriff, but she very well knows that nobody likes her for the position. But all she cares about is finding the truth about what happened to George. In that sense, she asks for the files about George's case, and Sandy says that she will look into it. At Holston's apartment, which is now hers, Juliet gets home and she notices the noise on the air vent. Some time later, Bernard arrives with a deputy so he can appoint her as a sheriff in front of a witness and gives her a uniform. The next day, she goes back to the office only to find nothing about George as his files aren't anywhere as Sandy notifies her. Then, she receives a report that Marnes is causing a commotion in the mids. As it turns out, he violently confronts an ex-criminal, accusing him of attempting to kill him. Acting quickly, Juliet stops him and they go to the cafeteria to cool him down. There he asks why she bothered accepting the job even though she knows nothing about police work. At this time, Juliet tells him about what she and Holston did before to find out the truth about George's case. Then, she shows Marnes the badge of Holston, revealing the word truth engraved at the back. She thinks that it's the signal that she has been waiting for from Holston, so she took the job. At this moment, Juliet and Marnes decide to team up to help each other find out the truth about George and John's death. After that, she promises him that she will quit as sheriff and that they can put anyone they want in the position. With that, they go through Marnes' list that he asked from Sims and head to the apartment of a man named Patrick Kennedy. But it's revealed that Patrick is no longer living in a listed apartment because his wife died already, so he was transferred to a singles apartment. Yet, things between him and Marnes get heated as the chief deputy talks badly about his wife, causing Patrick to hit him. After that, the two go to Marnes' apartment to attend to his broken nose. There, Juliet sees the drawing of John's that the chief deputy made. Before she leaves, Juliet asks if he wants some deputy outside his house to make sure he's safe, pointing out that he just angered many people. In turn, Marnes declines the offer, reasoning that he has a shotgun. Later that night, Juliet goes home and decides to check on the noise inside the air vent. Just then, she discovers a wire inside and pulls it, revealing a bag containing George case files, but finds nothing new or significant about it. Meanwhile, Marnes comes home from drinking outside when somebody attacks him and kills him with his own shotgun. After a while, the news reaches Juliet and she finds Sims and Paul Billings, who's now the new chief deputy at the crime scene. Shortly, Bernard arrives and insists the need to control the spread of the news to avoid further panic among the people of the silo. Before the mortuary team gets Marnes' body, Juliet takes a look around and notices that John's drawing on a wall is missing. Then she gets the list from his pocket so she can continue their investigation. At the mayor's office, they decide to bury Johns and Marnes together as a couple. Also, Bernard wants to conduct the race to the top competition to keep the people distracted from the two recent events. Sometime later, Sandy talks to Juliet in private, pleading with her to find out who killed Marnes. Sandy says that Judge Meadows of the Judicial will prioritize the order in the silo, even though it will mean that somebody will pay for the crime that they didn't commit just so the case can be closed. With that, Juliet and Paul go out to investigate. But since she doesn't trust him, Juliet makes a way so she can go solo. Yet, Paul just goes to the Judicial, seeing that Sims is talking to the man named Doug Trumbull, the man who killed Marnes. According to Sims, Doug is a candidate to be his shadow. Also, Paul discovers that the Judicial already had their fall guy. Meanwhile, Juliet breaks into Patrick's old apartment and finds the rat poison in John's drawing inside the closet. Seeing those two pieces of evidence, she immediately goes to him to put him in a safe place. Later at the station, Paul admits to Juliet that he went to the Judicial when they parted ways. But he reasons that he only did it because he wants her to trust him, revealing that a guy named Ralph Melby will be the fall guy. Because of that, she quickly goes to Patrick's old apartment as she gets the feeling that somebody will show up to kill him. And she is proven to be right when Doug arrives at the place. Busted, Doug runs so Juliet chases after him, eventually crossing paths against the race to the top runners. Then all of a sudden, Doug ambushes her and nearly throws Juliet over the stairs. Luckily, she manages to break his finger, causing him to escape as fast as he can. Shortly, the other runners show up to help her get back to safety. Meanwhile, Doug meets Sims, who just got out of the janitorial room. According to Sims, he was a son of a janitor, so everyone looked down on them. It even got to the point that he was badly bullied about it. However, when he told his father about it, his old man said nothing. But to his surprise, he found out the next day that his bully's family was transferred to Down Deep. Then, one day his father showed him what was inside the janitorial room, and he stated that it forever changed his life. Sims insists that what's inside the room is the most important job in the silo, which keeps their community alive. At this time, he points out that Doug messed up with George and Marnes, hinting at his connection to the computer guy's murder. Yet, Sims assures him that failure is nothing compared to his determination to get the job done. Because of that, he formally asks Doug to be his shadow. However, upon saying yes, Sims suddenly pushes Doug over the rails. The next day, his body is found, alongside the suicide note he made that was supposedly for Patrick. Juliet tells Judge Meadows that Doug planned to frame Patrick for John's and Marnes' murder and made it look like he took his own life out of guilt. At this time, Judge Meadows says that the case is finally closed and insists that knowing who killed the mayor and the former chief deputy is enough to give ease to the people of the silo. After that, Juliet and Paul go back to the station. At her office, Sandy thanked Juliet for solving the case. She also reveals that she will be transferring to the Mids where her family is. She shares that she will miss many things, but not the feeling of being watched all the time, which confuses Juliet. With that, Sandy bids her goodbye to Juliet by calling her sheriff for the first time. Later on, she is called to the mayor's office where Bernard commends her for solving the two cases. In turn, Juliet asks for 2 days off, stating that she needs to get back down to the Down Deep to get more of her stuff. On her way out, she notices a man named Lucas Kyle, who's always spending time at the cafeteria during its closing hours. As it turns out, Lucas likes to draw the night skies as he gets amazed by the stars. Showing it to Juliet, he points out that the stars have repeated patterns now and then every time he draws them. Sometime later, Juliet begins her journey down the silo. Upon arriving at Martha's, she tells her about the up top while the old woman is worried about her new job, especially after knowing that she nearly died. After reassuring her that she will be fine, Juliet asks about the video camera that she left her. Handing the camera and a magnifying glass to her, Martha says its lens is complicated. However, she cannot inspect it much because their magnifying glass isn't strong enough to see smaller letters and components. At this time, Martha raises two questions about the pact. First, she's wondering why the pact won't allow them to make a machine that can make going up or down the silo easier. And lastly, why are they not allowed to use more powerful magnification beyond certain power? In consideration of those two questions, especially the last one, Martha says the video camera can be a relic that the judicial will kill for. Because of that, she wants her to quit, but Juliet asserts that she needs the position to know the truth about what truly happened to George. And for that to work, she says that she needs the right bait. Due to that, Juliet goes to George's secret place and grabs his box of relics to get the toy duck. Then, she planted the evidence in Doug's house. That is why when she, Paul, and another deputy conduct a search in the dead man's house, Paul is able to find it among his stuff. Shortly, Paul discovers that she hasn't surrendered the relic yet and reminds her that it's illegal. In turn, Juliet reasons that she wants to investigate the matter further, in which Paul points out that she needs Judge Meadows' approval to do so. With that, the two go to the judicial to formally open a relic investigation. Upon hearing that they're still on Doug's case, Meadows says that she already told them to stop their investigation. But Juliet says finding a relic inside a member of a judicial's apartment, who also happens to be a killer, is worth investigating. Sims, on the other hand, insists that it doesn't belong to Doug. According to him, they have the records of all confiscated relics, so it's impossible for a member of the judicial to keep one for himself. Yet, Meadows still approves their request. After that, Juliet and Paul head to Patrick's place as he turns out to be a relic dealer. At first, he doesn't want to give them a name, but upon Juliet's insistence, Patrick finally points them to a woman named Regina Jackson. And to Juliet's surprise, Regina turns out to be George's ex-girlfriend. She recognizes George's watch that is now worn by Juliet, so she realizes that she was her ex-girlfriend on a mechanical. Regina says that she doesn't deal with relics anymore, reasoning that she only did it because George told her so. She states that George used her to get relics, and when he was done with her, he dumped her like nothing to go to mechanical in search of the answer to what George called the big question. Hearing all that, Juliet realizes that she doesn't truly know who George was and starts to doubt if she was just like Regina. After a while, Sims and Bernard go to the station where Sims confronts Juliet about the toy duck relic. According to his own investigation, the relic belonged to George Wilkins, her supposed friend. In turn, Juliet lies that she knows nothing about it. At this time, Bernard butts in and asks if Doug was part of the team who confiscated George's hidden relics, to which Sims refuses to answer, reasoning that it's confidential. Bernard, on the other hand, takes it as a yes and explains that Doug must have taken an interest in a harmless relic, which was why he decided to take it. With that, the temporary mayor reiterates that pursuing Doug's case further will only reveal the truth to the people of the silo that their old mayor and chief deputy were murdered. Because of that, he orders Juliet to stop her investigation, not wanting their perfect cover story to get messed up. When Bernard and Sims are gone, Paul asks Juliet directly if she planted the relic in Doug's apartment so he can find it. Upon saying yes, Paul reasons that he could have been punished or, worse, sent outside to clean because of what she did. Tired of getting doubted by Juliet, he tells her that if they want their team up to work, she needs to be honest with him. Hearing that, Juliet bursts out and says that if she will be honest, both of them will be in trouble as she turns out to have noticed the symptoms of syndrome on Paul. According to her, someone like him shouldn't be working in the station in the first place, but he can't be honest about it as well. This hits Paul hard and carries it until he gets home to his family. Meanwhile, Juliet radios Martha and says that she will quit. She tells her everything she discovers about George, but Martha talks some sense into her, stating that George might be her reason for accepting the job, but it's love that makes her want to pursue the truth. Because of that, she goes back to Regina, who's now more paranoid than earlier. At this point, Juliet confronts her and asks if she was the one who ratted out George to the judicial, eventually causing his death. In turn, Regina reasons that she has no other choice as they threaten her friends and family. She also says that it wasn't the judicial who questioned her but some mysterious men who somehow knew everyone in her life. Confused, Juliet just asks what did George give her, and Regina reveals to her the deadliest relic of all time, referring to an old magazine. According to her, it was from George's family and has been passed through generations until his mother and Aunt Gloria. Before letting her go, Regina reminds her to keep everything that she will know to herself or she might be the next one to die. With that, Juliet goes home and immediately looks at the magazine in which she saw the outside world for the first time. In shock, she cannot believe what she's seeing as she remembers the time when George told her the big question of what if everything that they know to be true was, in fact, a lie. The 6th episode ends with the revelation that Juliet and all other residents of the silo are being monitored through the hidden cameras in their home.